Hi guys, today we're making Indian yum. That's what I'm calling it. And I'm starting with 1 tablespoon of coconut oil. You could do this with no fat. And I am dicing 1 onion. I would say it's probably a large onion. And we're just gonna dump that right in the pot. I'm using a couple of things that I just have lying around and I'm just throwing in the pot. So those ingredients you don't necessarily need to add. They're just extra. The things that they're not going to change the recipe. Just giving it a good stir there. I have a little bit of leftover onion from the fridge. There's probably like, I don't know, half a cup there. I just wanted to toss it in to use it up. More or less onion is not going to hurt the recipe in any way or form. Here I have 3 stalks of celery. They're just washed, and I'm trying to go for kind of a smaller dice. There's no perfection here, but just because I wanted it to have the kind of the soft texture. So yeah, just dice that up, throw it in the pot. And I have 3 carrots, or probably maybe 2 large carrots is the equivalent of that. Again, whatever you have on hand. If you don't want to add in even all of the vegetables, this would be more kind of like a dal, Indian dal kind of flavor profile, sort of, kinda. I guess it's a little bit richer than that. I don't know. I don't know what to call it. It's just delicious in my opinion. So I'm dicing up these carrots as well. I'm trying to go for the same size as my celery and onion, which I guess is standard, but I have about 7 cloves of garlic here. Add that into the pot. If you like less, add less. If you like more, add more. This didn't make it very super garlicky or anything in my opinion, but you know, you get to play around a little bit when you cook. Here I just have a couple of chunks of tomato that were just left over. So this is one of those ingredients that isn't really part of the recipe, but I'm just adding it in to use it up. And this is how I traditionally cook. I just throw things into the pot that are just kind of lying around or sitting around, or use them up. Here is a can of tomato paste. This doesn't have anything else in it except for tomato paste. It's very hard to find things without citric acid in them, but that was the goal here. So just one small can of tomato paste, and I'm using a can of these cherry tomatoes I've showed you before. They're just tomatoes. And stir those in. Here I'm just using about, I don't know, half a package of mushrooms, just a little bit. Again, this wouldn't traditionally be in there. I also added a cup and a half of lentils. They were just rinsed. And that is 4 cups of water. You could use stock if you have that on hand or want to use that as well. And spices. Now I played around a lot with spices here, so here I'm adding 2 teaspoons of Marsala garam caramel, can't even say it, 1 teaspoon of ginger, 2 teaspoons of onion powder, 1 teaspoon of cumin, 3 teaspoons of parsley. Now here I'm adding 1/8 of a teaspoon of cinnamon. I do actually later on add quite a bit more cinnamon and the Marsala. Here I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of garlic powder. So yeah, the spices to me you're going to have to play around with a little bit. That's kind of the base. The ones that I added more of later on is the garam masala and the cinnamon. I probably added a tablespoon more of the Marsala and at least a teaspoon of cinnamon. I also added some salt and pepper in there. And here I'm just, there's probably about 4 cups of spinach. I'm just giving that kind of a rough chop just to break it down a little bit because I don't like when it's big honks. So here I'm tasting it to just see where I'm at so far. And again, this is kind of how I cook. So I just kind of play with my flavors as I go because it changes as it cooks and as the water evaporates and as it gets thicker and as you add more ingredients and all of that. So definitely to taste, you might like yours spicier. You could also add in, you know, red pepper flakes or something more spicy. And here I'm just going to add in a couple of handfuls of green beans. You could add frozen if you have those too. I just had some on hand and I thought that they would be good in there, so in it went. Actually, I really liked that I did add these because they did change the texture a little bit, which was kind of nice. And I'm just putting on some basmati rice there in the background. You can barely see me there. Just like maybe, you don't have to put this over rice. You could even put this over potato if you wanted to. Both are good, or you can just eat it right out of the pot plain. And again, I'm always tasting it through the whole process to just make sure my flavor is where I want it or what tastes good to me. So here I added in a little bit of curry powder as well. This was kind of an afterthought. I just needed something to up it a little bit. And so there was probably about a tablespoon of curry powder. And as you can see, it's thickening up here a little bit too. I did end up adding 2 more cups of water. Excuse me, just to thin it out a little bit. I'll show you the texture that I was going for. And I want the spinach in at the very end. So this is the end of this whole process because I didn't want it to like just become mush or you know how spinach becomes when it's cooked. So this is the very end. And there you have it. That's the texture that we're going for, kind of like a thick stew-like texture. And there you have it. That is Indian yum. Enjoy.